you're in a position where you feel like you're just tanking your results every single weekend and you're in this stop-start really good throughout the week and then it all unravels on the weekend and you're just starting again every single Monday, this is going to be a very valuable video for you to watch. This is obviously a very common thing to happen in any sort of fat loss goal. Across the week, everything's super dialed in. You've probably got your meal prep done, meals are planned out, and everything's very consistent. There's not too many things to drag you in different directions, maybe a few work functions here and there, but they're nothing crazy. But then we get to the weekend, right? And you could have had a stressful week. You're tired, fatigued, and you just want to blow off some steam. And you're in this constant battle between your health and fitness goals and wanting to socialize and enjoy everything across the weekend. And as soon as something comes up and you kind of just like let go a little bit, you feel like it all comes undone. And then it spirals out of control from there. And then the rest of the weekend, you just go through it not caring, feeling quite disappointed, but I'll reset this and go again Monday. But eventually it gets to that point where you just think, what is the point? Why do I even bother if I'm just gonna do this every single weekend? Well, what we're gonna do in this training is teach you how you can maintain that social life and have your weekends whilst also still driving the results that you want, because it is very, very doable. And I think to start this off, one of the key things is that just knowing that it's possible, right? Like there doesn't have to be this constant tension between your socializing and your health and fitness goals, because when it comes to looking at health and fitness, of course, that includes our ability to interact with people, do fun things. Like it can't just be one of those things that either comes at the cost of things that are very, very important to us, like family and friends, or the results that we want for our body right now. Obviously, with this socializing on the weekend and just catching up with people in general, a lot of the time it revolves around food. And what we want to avoid is getting into these positions where we're either saying no to everything or we're going there super anxious about how it's going to play out, because then you can't just sit there and enjoy the moment for what it is and you're not fully present. You have it in the back of your head, am I undoing all the progress that I've made throughout the week? Which then kind of in turn leads to poorer decisions anyway. So this is what we're going to break down in this training, and hopefully once you come out the back end of this, you know exactly how you're going to handle your weekend so you can kind of get the best of both worlds. So what I want to do first is go through a very typical scenario, and I kind of explained this in the intro, but essentially, as you can see on the slide here, we nail our whole week. The Monday to Friday is pretty straightforward. Work's super busy. We're running around with other commitments and kids. And for our nutrition to be in place and in a good spot, we have to have some level of organization that is already built and going ahead, right? And so basically what will typically happen is our breakfasts look very similar day to day. Our lunches are probably pre-prepared, and then dinner we cook each night, but it's not like we're going out to eat or anything like that. And like on a day-to-day basis, the nutrition looks pretty steady, but then we get to the weekend, right? And like I said, we have every intention of keeping things in check, but the invites start coming through. You've got to the end of the week and there's no food in the fridge, so you're like, you can't be bothered cooking, so you just order something. And as soon as that first meal hits and you're trying to release after a super hectic week, sometimes it can get a bit out of hand. And then from there on in, I've undone everything. You probably jump on the scale the next day and it's up by 1 kilo, and it just completely blows out from there. That is a pretty typical pattern in how people get into these like really stop-start approaches. Now, how we start to break this is start to look at things in the context of longer periods of time, of averages over weeks, over months, not single days. And I'll go through an example at the end of this training that'll be very useful. But basically, people will undo 5 days of really hard work for one meal that they think is out of place. And now where the issue lies here is that they're looking at that individual meal or individual day as the thing that's going to undo 5 days of something that's been going really well. Now, unless you go absolutely wild, like I'm talking wild with your food, probably more wild than you actually think is possible, you are not gonna undo 5 days of really, really good solid nutrition, which most people have. And so what we wanna do is if something comes up and it's not necessarily on your plan, you go a little bit over your calories, whatever that kind of is, just something that you didn't initially intend to happen, the first thing you do is you just get back on track the next day and just look at it from an average time frame, not single specific days, because people get very focused on what's happened in the immediate and think that 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 has all of a sudden represented how everything's going. But if you actually look back across the week and realize, yo, I've actually done a pretty good job. This one thing that came up unplanned that I went to where I didn't necessarily watch things as tight as I could isn't going to undo all the hard work that I've just done. So that's why it's super important to look at things in an average sense, not just on like a single meal to meal, day-to-day basis. One thing before we go into some specific tactics is that whilst I think maintaining a social life in order to get these results is super important, especially if that's something that's important to you. I think like if you're trying to drive any sort of body composition or fat loss result and you get told to do something that is way outside of your beliefs and values, i.e. cut off all socializing, say no to everything, it's not gonna work. No matter how good the plan is and no matter how accurate the calories set or how good the meal plan is, whatever it is, if it takes away a component of your life that is very important to you, you're just not gonna stick to it, right? With that being said, if you do want change in your body composition, there is going to be something that you need to do that is different to what you previously used to do. So if you have a bunch of habits and a bunch of patterns that you have within your life that are contributing to you being in that stuck place, there is going to have to be some element of sacrifice and change. So if that requires you to, I guess, do things like not get as much Uber Eats, which is just kind of like a takeout meal on the fly because you can't be bothered cooking, and cook more home meals, I think that's a really important thing to start to take into consideration. And look, at the end of the day, I'm not here to tell you how to live your life. You live your life however you want, right? But when I come in as a coach, I go, okay, these are the goals you want. These are the things that you're doing. Now, what's more important to you? Is it more important to you to live this way, knowing that it probably won't get you this result? Or are you willing to sacrifice X, Y, Z, knowing that it will drive this result? So whilst there needs to be a balance between the two, just realize that if you're, I guess, going free for all every single weekend, you are probably not going to get to the place that you want to be, and you just got to toss up which is more important to you. So there does have to be some sort of element of change. Otherwise, you wouldn't be in a position where you are trying to lose body fat. So the things that you're doing now are directly contributing to the state that you're in. And if you want to change that, obviously something has to be different. Now, strategy number one is just plan your weekends. So everyone plans really, really well. Like I said, Monday to Friday. Breakfasts are all the same. The lunches are planned out. You've probably got some sort of organization with your dinner, at least food in the house, and it's all just really planned and you know what's going on. We hit Friday, there's no food in the house, and we're not going shopping till Sunday or something like that. And just it's just an open slather kind of weekend. There's nothing in the schedule in terms of like, what food are we gonna eat? So step number one, plan out exactly when you've got events on already planned for the weekend. So you might already have a dinner Saturday night and a breakfast Sunday morning. And let's look at this in the context of between Friday night, so finishing work, and end of day Sunday. So there's probably, if you're eating 3 meals per day on average, there's Friday night dinner, and then 3 meals across Saturday, Sunday, that's 7 meals, right? So 2 of those you've already got planned out, the Saturday night dinner and the Sunday breakfast that you're going through, right? There is still 5 meals left in the week or left in the weekend that you need to account for, right? And what generally happens with people, like I said, there's no food in the house. So you're just kind of like scratching at things and you're like picking at different snacks. You wake up Saturday morning, there's no food in the house, so you just go out for a breakfast anyway. There's still no food in the house at lunch, so you grab some Uber Eats, and it's all a bit of a mess, right? So you have those 2 meals that you've already got in the schedule, right? The rest of your meals, just on a Thursday or a Friday, have a think about what you're gonna eat. Now, it doesn't have to be like a full meal plan or anything. Maybe you just open up a phone note and go, okay, for breakfast, Saturday, I'm gonna have this. For lunch on Saturday, I'm gonna have this. For dinner on Friday, I'm gonna have this. And you just make a rough plan. Then go shopping. Make sure the food is in your house and there, whether it's just in the fridge and its components or it's pre-prepared, just make sure you've got food in your house so it actually stops. Like if you've got nothing in your house, you've got no other choice. And often when you get into the weekend and wanting to relax, the last thing you wanna do is like go to the supermarket and actually prepare food. So look at what the scope of your weekend looks like, plan out the meals that you're having out, plan out the meals that you'll be having at home, make sure there's food in the house for when you do go to have them at home, right? And we're just not leaving anything to chance. So now we have a really solid plan across the weekend. And even if you do get invited out to something else, like we know things can pop up on the fly, at least the rest of it's still organized, right? Again, if you have on average 7 meals across from Friday dinner to Sunday dinner, if 3 of those are out and the rest are at home, that's still more than half of the meals that you have a really good control over. And that's a fantastic start and probably #1 place to start. Now, let's expand this out across the week, right? No matter what happens, so you've got the plan for the weekend, no matter what happens in the meals that you have out, the very next meal, you would just back to that original plan, which is why it's important to have a plan in the first place, otherwise you have nothing to go back to. So let's expand our example out, and this is the thing I referred to at the start that I was gonna touch on. You have, again, on average 3 meals per day. I know people eat more, but it's just for ease of use. Let's say you have on average 3 meals per day across a week, that's 21 meals, right? Let's say 3 of those meals you eat out, which is probably more than what most people do, but kind of I'm using the top end example just to give you something that to relate to this, right? So that is still 18 of 21 meals that you can still have planned, controlled, and within what you're trying to do. There is no way that you are not getting phenomenal results if you nail on the head 18 of the 21 meals, right? And so this is why it's super important that whatever happens on the Friday night, whatever happens on the Saturday, you just get back on track the next day. And this is where the averages comes into play. Like, we're looking at the averages across those 21 meals, not a single meal. But people get to meal 19, go a little bit off track, and then think that means it's undoing the previous 18 meals that they absolutely nailed. And it's just not gonna happen. So whatever happens, whether you did your best with your planning, you go out to dinner and you absolutely blow it out, whether you have that food at home and you still go on Uber Eats and order a meal and ice cream, whatever happens, no matter how you handle it, the next meal you just go back to the plan. Because if the rest of your weeks looked great, it's not gonna undo everything. Now, this is a different story if the rest of your week didn't look so great, because then it's just a larger problem overall that you're just not sticking to anything in general. But if the rest of your week has looked really good, no matter how bad you blow out within a meal, or no matter how bad you go off plan, it is gonna be okay if you just get straight back on track the next meal, the next day, whatever that may be. Now, handling meals out themselves, I think this is also another important thing to kind of touch on, right? And I'm kind of doing these in order of how they would kind of land. So like, plan your weekends out first, just get back on track the next meal. This is the last thing to kind of look at in that order, right? So the first point there, don't bank calories beforehand. I used to be a big believer in this. I actually think that it works. It doesn't work as well as what most people think. From coaching a stack of people, basically what happens, because I used to use this, if you bank calories beforehand, what ends up happening is you just go into that meal hungry. And once you put a stack of really good, tasty food in front of you, it is very, very hard to control. And most people end up way overeating anyway. So what I think you do, let's say it's a dinner, you have your normal breakfast, you have your normal lunch, you maybe even have like a small snack before you go. I think you're better able to control calorie intake or food intake. The best way to do it is to go in not as hungry, feeling slightly full. And then it's much easier to do than just relying on pure willpower yourself, because you will just fill up. That kind of covers point number 2 there. Now, the next thing that you do with whatever meal it is, just have it in a reasonable portion size. If you're in a fat loss phase, and this is one of those things where we're coming back to like sort of being okay with sacrificing bits and pieces of how you'd usually act now for the attainment of the goal that you're currently going for. So if you're usually someone that goes to a restaurant, gets 2 entrees, shares a couple of mains, and then gets dessert, within the context of a fat loss phase, what you'd be probably trying to do is just cut that down a bit. And whatever the meal is, if you just have the main meal and leave it at that will be absolutely fine in a meal that you're going to have out right now. Something else that we can layer in on top of that is if you, within that main meal, you try and keep it very protein-based, vegetable-based, or just at least have a good amount of protein and fiber within that meal so you do stay full. But whatever it is, because I understand that like some restaurants or places you go to eat out, that's not always possible with the protein and veggies. If you can just stick to a main meal with a reasonable portion size, that'll work out really well. Now, when you do go out to eat, one of the big things around food, right, is how you view it. So first of all, in a social setting, you are there to enjoy the people and the people around you. The experience that you have, and at least the people's experience of you, is not going to be dented by how much food you consume. You don't have to eat till past full and don't have to eat as much food as possible to socialize and have the exact same experience as the people that you want to have the experience with, right? The next thing, that food is not going anywhere. A lot of people go out to eat, and when they look at the food that's in front of them, they kind of view it as something they have to take advantage of, like it's never going to be there again. That is always going to be available to you, or at least similar variations. The food is not going anywhere. This is something that you can come back to again and again. You don't need to eat like that food is never going to be within your life again. And then the last point on that, when you do have these body composition goals, and for a lot of people watching this, you've probably had these goals for a very, very long time and struggled with the frustration of not being able to attain them. The enjoyment that you get from food is pretty short-lived. It's great in the moment, but then after that, that all kind of disappears and you're left with the state that you are really struggling to get out of and something you have to contend with and probably further away from that, right? So you can go and enjoy all these foods in reasonable amounts without actually overdoing it and still be on track with your goals. It's just that concept of you don't want to be treating it like a free-for-all every time you go. All of this is very doable, where you can have this social life, enjoy these good foods, and still work towards your health and fitness goals, but only, I guess, if you treat food in a way that's responsible with what you're trying to achieve. And trust me, when you come out of that meal, having not gone to town and like eaten as much as possible, and you enjoyed the food, you enjoyed the company, you come out of the meal not feeling sick, bloated, heavy, you wake up the next day, again, not feeling sick, bloated, and heavy, you will enjoy the experience so much more because you don't come away from that meal feeling mad guilty about what you did. When you're going into that meal and you're just going for it, I know as you start to get into it, you're like, okay, I'm undoing all my progress now, and you start to feel really, really full. And then the anxiety starts to creep into the back of your head, like, okay, this is getting out of hand, and like, I don't want to jump on the scale tomorrow. And all of that starts to come and starts to play into it, right? This level, I guess, of it's not restraint, it's just a different way of thinking about it, actually makes the entire experience more enjoyable in general. Now, when you do eat out on the weekends and when you are social, no matter how well you handle it, the scale is probably just gonna bump up a little bit the next couple of days, right? So let's say you do have a calorie target and you stay within that calorie target across the whole weekend, right? But the meals that you're eating change. Like maybe you go out for a dinner and it finishes a bit later Sunday night, and you've gone out for Asian, which is typically a bit saltier or higher in sodium foods, right? You wake up the next day, even though you stayed within your calories, the scale's up by a kilo. Don't freak out. You haven't done anything wrong. That is just a natural fluctuation within the body. Now, a very typical pattern for people that are in fat loss phases that socialize on the weekend is that you'll see your lowest body weights kind of happen across Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, when all your intake's kind of consistent and normal. And bear in mind, when I explain this out, the calories are equated, right? So let's say you hit 1,800 calories across the week, but it's in that normal like day-to-day, week-to-week rhythm, right? Then you get to the weekend, food changes, you're still in that 1,800 calories, but things like sodium, extra carbs, undigested foods, even just foods that react with your body a little bit, drive water retention and inflammation up a little bit as of Monday. So you will see a small bump. Don't automatically think you've undone everything. You just need to get back to exactly what your normal day-to-day eating is during the week, and that'll drift back down again, and you'll see new lows across, again, that Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, once the body's had a bit of time just to flush out that excess water and inflammation. So the key thing when you are having these social weekends is to just expect body weight to jump a little bit, because again, people feel like they've undone everything and then like, what's the point? But it is just part and parcel with, like if you didn't want to experience those fluctuations, you just have to keep nutrition the same across the whole week. And for a lot of people, that's just not something they want to do. So in summary, how to approach your weekends can be broken down into 3 key steps. So first and foremost, just plan it out. Sit down sometime on Thursday and think, okay, between Friday night and Sunday night, what do I have on, and what am I going to eat in all the meals in between that, and just make sure you get that food in your house. Step number 2, every time you eat out, whether it goes exactly as planned or whether you go overboard, you just get back onto what the plan is the next meal, because we're working on that weekly average, right? Step number 3, when you go into those meals, don't change things about how you're eating. Don't try and restrict calories beforehand. Go in under normal circumstances with meals under your belt. You haven't reduced the amount of food that you're eating. Go in with a normal amount of satiation, and that will help control calorie intake when you're there. Once you do get there, have a reasonable portion size. If you can, include protein and veggies on the plate. You do that on a week-to-week basis, expecting small fluctuations in body weight Monday. You will be absolutely fine, and you'll get the best of both worlds, where you'll achieve results, but also maintain your social life.